John had always considered himself an ordinary man living an ordinary life. He worked in a small office, came home to his modest apartment, and spent his evenings reading or watching the occasional movie. He liked the routine. It was predictable, safe, and uncomplicated. But on that particular morning, everything changed in ways he could never have imagined. It started with his usual morning walk. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft orange glow over the neighborhood. Birds were singing their morning songs, and the air was crisp and fresh. John enjoyed these walks. They gave him a sense of peace, a moment to clear his mind before the day began. On this morning, however, something felt different. There was a faint rustling in the woods that bordered the small park he often walked through. At first, he thought, it was just the wind or some small animal. But then he noticed a movement that was too deliberate to be a squirrel or a bird. Curiosity got the better of him. He moved closer, trying to see what was causing the noise. Peering through the branches, he caught sight of a small figure crouched behind a tree. It was a girl, but she was unlike any child he had ever seen. Her hair shimmered in an unusual way, almost as if it had a faint glow, and her eyes reflected light like tiny polished gems. She looked frightened, scanning the area with wide, fearful eyes. Before John could call out to her, a group of figures emerged from the shadows. They moved quickly and silently, surrounding her in a manner that made it clear they meant harm. John's heart raced. He had never been in a situation like this before, never faced danger so directly. His first instinct was to run, to call for help. But something inside him refused to let him abandon the girl. She was clearly in danger, and someone had to protect her. Without thinking twice, he stepped forward. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice surprisingly strong despite the adrenaline coursing through his body. The figures paused, startled by his sudden appearance. John grabbed a sturdy branch from the ground, holding it like a makeshift weapon. He knew it wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The girl looked at him with a mixture of hope and disbelief. The figures moved toward him again, and John realized that he would have to act quickly. He swung the branch, aiming to scare them off rather than hurt them. To his surprise, the figures hesitated, as if they were not entirely human. They had strange angular features, and their movements were unnervingly precise. John felt a chill run down his spine, but he refused to back down. The girl was counting on him for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. John used every trick he could think of to keep the attackers at bay. He dodged, swung, and shouted, all the while keeping one eye on the girl to make sure she stayed safe. Finally, the figures retreated, melting back into the shadows as if they had never been there. John sank to the ground, exhausted and shaking. His arms ached, his heart pounded, but he had succeeded. The girl was safe for the moment. She stepped closer to him, her small hand trembling as she reached out. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. John nodded, still trying to catch his breath. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. She nodded, though her eyes were filled with lingering fear. As they sat there in the quiet of the woods, John studied her more closely. Her features were delicate and almost otherworldly. There was something in her gaze that suggested she was far more than an ordinary child. When he asked her name, she hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully, then said, "I'm Lyra." It was a simple name, but it seemed to carry weight, as if it were tied to something far greater than John could understand. Lyra did not immediately explain who she was or why she was in danger. She only said that she needed help, and that John had already done more than anyone else would have dared. John listened, feeling a mix of awe and confusion. The situation was unlike anything he had ever experienced. A sense of responsibility settled over him. He realized that this girl's life was now somehow entwined with his own. As the morning sun rose higher, casting light over the woods, John made a decision. He would not abandon Lyra. Whatever her story was, whatever danger she faced, he would protect her. It was not a heroic thought or a grand declaration. It was simply instinct. In that moment, John understood something vital about courage. It was not about strength, cleverness, or preparation. It was about choice. He had chosen to act, and that choice had saved a life. By the time the sun fully illuminated the park, John and Lyra were walking toward the edge of the town, moving cautiously, but with purpose. John kept a protective hand near her shoulder, while Lyra looked around nervously, as if expecting danger to return at any moment. Despite the fear, there was a sense of calm in their steps, a quiet understanding forming between them. John did not know what the future held. He had never imagined that his simple morning walk would lead to this extraordinary encounter. Yet, as he glanced down at Lyra, he felt a strange certainty. This meeting was no accident. Something much larger was at play, something that would change his life forever. And so what began as an ordinary morning had become the start of an adventure beyond John's wildest imagination, a path that would test his courage, his heart, and his very understanding of the world around him. But, for now, there was only the moment. The quiet woods, the rising sun, and the small frightened girl whose life he had saved without hesitation. After escaping the immediate danger in the woods, John and Lyra found themselves sitting on a quiet bench at the edge of the town. The morning had fully arrived, and the streets were slowly coming to life, but neither of them felt entirely safe. Yet. Lyra's eyes, bright and shimmering, darted around nervously, as if she expected trouble to appear from every corner. John studied her, trying to make sense of what had happened. Her appearance, her abilities, and the strange attackers, it was all beyond anything he had ever imagined. Finally, he asked, "Lyra, who are you? Why were those people after you?" Lyra hesitated, biting her lip as though weighing the words carefully. Then she spoke, her voice soft but filled with urgency. "I'm not from here. I come from far away, from another world. My home, it's in danger, and I was sent here for protection." John blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. Another world? Was she speaking metaphorically, or did she truly mean it? He wanted to ask more questions, but he decided first to understand her feelings. Fear, confusion, and hope all mixed in her expression. He realized she wasn't lying, at least not in the way children sometimes do to avoid punishment. "Another world?" he repeated slowly. "You mean, like, another country?" Lyra shook her head, her glowing eyes widening. "No, much farther, far beyond this sky. My people. They need me, but I wasn't safe there, so I had to come here. And now, those who want to hurt me found me here." John took a deep breath. He didn't fully understand what she meant, but one thing was clear: she needed help, and he could not turn away. "Okay," he said, trying to sound calm even though his heart was still racing. "I don't know exactly what's going on, but I promise, I'll help you. You won't be alone." Lyra's small shoulders seemed to relax slightly, though. Tension remained in her posture. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." John smiled faintly, unsure how to explain. "Sometimes it's just the right thing to do. No one should be hurt when you can stop it. And I couldn't just walk away when you needed help." For a moment, silence hung between them. The ordinary sounds of the town continued around them. The distant hum of cars, birds chirping, people going about their daily routines. But in their little corner of the world, everything felt different. John realized that his life, as ordinary as it had been, had changed in an instant. A strange, extraordinary life had opened up before him, and there was no turning back. Lyra then reached into her small bag and pulled out a device unlike anything John had ever seen. It was compact, metallic, and seemed to pulse with a soft blue light. She handed it to him. "This can help us," she said. "It can protect us, and it can show us the way back to my home." John examined the device carefully. It was lightweight and oddly warm to the touch. Though he didn't understand how it worked, he felt its importance. He nodded. "All right, let's do this together." And so began their tentative journey. They moved carefully through the town, staying in shadows when possible, avoiding the notice of curious neighbors. Lyra explained in small bits what she could about her world. She told John about her people, their civilization, and the threat that had forced her to flee. She spoke of towering cities, strange creatures, and a queen who ruled with wisdom and kindness. Everything sounded incredible, almost like a story from a dream. Yet the seriousness in her voice left no doubt about its truth. John listened closely, asking questions whenever he could. The more he learned, the more he realized the gravity of their situation. This was not a simple case of a scared child needing protection. This was the beginning of an adventure that spanned galaxies, a mission that could determine the safety of an entire civilization. And somehow, he had become a part of it. Their journey through the town was not without challenges. A few times, John noticed shadowy figures lingering in alleyways, watching them with careful attention. He felt his heart race but stayed calm, keeping Lyra close. Each time he managed to steer them away, hiding behind walls, ducking into crowds, and using the city's chaos to their advantage. The trust between them grew with each narrow escape. Lyra began to rely on John not just for protection, but for guidance. She watched him carefully, learning how he assessed danger and acted decisively, and John in turn learned to anticipate her needs and read her subtle cues. By midday, they found a quiet spot in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. It was dusty and dim, but it provided safety for a moment to rest and regroup. John and Lyra sat together on a worn crate, catching their breath. She finally spoke again, this time with a hint of vulnerability in her voice. "I didn't think anyone would help me. On my world, people are careful. They don't risk themselves, but you risked everything for me without hesitation." John shook his head, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. "I didn't think about it like that. I just knew it was wrong to let them hurt you. That's all. Sometimes the right choice doesn't need a reason, you just do it." Lyra smiled faintly, a small but genuine smile. "You're different from anyone I've ever met." John chuckled softly. "Well, I guess I'll take that as a compliment." As the afternoon sun began to tilt toward the horizon, Lyra shared more about the urgency of returning home. Her world's danger was not far off. It was immediate. She spoke of looming threats, of the need for swift action, and of a queen who waited for her safely. Though John had barely begun to grasp the full scale of her story, he understood one thing clearly. There was no time to waste. They had to move, and he had to be ready to face whatever lay ahead. The bond between them, formed in the heat of danger and strengthened by shared trust, was now undeniable. John no longer saw Lyra as just a child in need of protection. She was a brave, intelligent, and determined individual who had chosen to confide in him, and Lyra no longer saw John as just an ordinary man. He was her protector, her guide, and someone she could rely on in a world that had suddenly become far larger and far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. As they left the warehouse and stepped back into the dim light of late afternoon, John felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with unknown dangers and challenges, but he also felt a growing sense of purpose. For the first time in his life, he was doing something truly important, something that mattered far beyond his own small world. Together, John and Lyra walked toward an uncertain future, bound by trust and courage, ready to face the challenges that awaited them. And in that moment, John realized that one simple act, one choice to protect a frightened child, had changed his life forever. The journey to return Lyra to her world was nothing like John had ever experienced. The streets and forests of Earth seemed ordinary at first, but soon they discovered that danger followed them at every turn. The shadowy figures who had attacked Lyra were still nearby, tracking her through the city and beyond. John realized that protecting her would require more than courage. It would require careful planning, quick thinking, and a willingness to face the unknown. Lyra held tightly to the small glowing device she had brought with her, guiding them through hidden paths and secret shortcuts. John followed closely, keeping an eye out for any sign of the attackers. Each step brought new challenges. Alleyways twisted unexpectedly. Narrow passages forced them to squeeze through cramped spaces, and occasionally, they had to climb fences or jump across rooftops to avoid detection. John's heart raced constantly, but he refused to show fear in front of Lyra. She needed him calm, strong, and ready to act at any moment. As they moved, Lyra began to explain more about her world. She spoke of vast cities made of materials that seemed to glow from within, of enormous ships that could travel faster than anything on Earth, and of creatures that were intelligent, kind, and loyal. She told him about the political dangers her people faced, about rival factions and threats that could destroy her entire civilization. John listened in awe. The reality of her story was incredible, yet her sincerity left no doubt that everything she said was true. They had to navigate several dangerous encounters along the way. At one point, they reached a narrow bridge that spanned a river. The attackers had discovered their location, and John could see them moving quickly toward the bridge's entrance. Thinking fast, John grabbed a piece of metal debris from the ground and used it to create a distraction. He banged it against the side of a nearby building, causing a loud echo that drew the attention of their pursuers. Lyra seized the moment, running across the bridge with agility and speed that John struggled to match. Once they reached the other side, John joined her, panting and exhausted, but relieved. They had escaped once again. "You're amazing," he said, looking at her with admiration. Lyra smiled faintly, though her eyes remained cautious. "You're not so bad yourself," she replied, her voice filled with warmth. "I didn't think anyone from this world could keep up with me." Their bond grew stronger with every challenge. John realized that Lyra was not just a child who needed protection. She was a partner in survival. She read situations quickly, made decisions instinctively, and trusted him to act when necessary. In turn, John's calm determination and resourcefulness gave her the confidence to push forward, even when fear threatened to overwhelm her. Together, they were stronger than either could be alone. At one point, they had to cross a dense forest, moving quietly to avoid detection. The trees were tall, their branches forming a thick canopy that blocked much of the sunlight. Strange noises echoed around them, birds, insects, and sounds that John could not identify. He felt a shiver of fear but reminded himself that he had faced worse. With Lyra at his side, he felt a courage he had never known before. During a brief rest in a small clearing, Lyra shared more about the technology of her world. The device she carried was not just for navigation. It could protect them from harm and even communicate across long distances. She showed John how to use it, teaching him to activate its protective shields and subtle alerts. John listened carefully, practicing the controls while she guided him. He realized that the device would be essential for their journey, and mastering it could mean the difference between safety and danger. Their path eventually led them to the outskirts of town, where the buildings gave way to rolling hills and open fields. The freedom of space brought a brief sense of relief, but John knew better than to let his guard down. The attackers were relentless, and the journey to Lyra's home was far from over. They moved cautiously, sticking to shadows and using the natural terrain for cover. Occasionally, they would stop and hide behind trees or rocks, watching for signs of pursuit. One evening, as the sun began to set, they encountered a small group of figures blocking their path. John and Lyra froze. The attackers had grown bolder, and escape seemed impossible. Thinking quickly, John remembered a small stream nearby. He whispered to Lyra, "Follow me. We can use the water to hide and move quietly." Together they slipped into the shallow stream, the cool water masking their scent and sound. They crept along the banks, hearts pounding, until the attackers passed by, oblivious to their presence. After hours of careful travel, they finally reached a hidden portal, a shimmering circular doorway that seemed to ripple like water. Lyra's eyes lit up as she approached it. "This is the way," she whispered. John looked at her, then at the portal, unsure of what lay beyond. Yet he trusted her instinct and the bond they had formed. Together, they stepped through. The sensation was unlike anything John had experienced. The world around him shifted. colors blending and stretching in ways that defied explanation. He felt weightless, as if floating between reality and a dream. Lyra held his hand tightly, guiding him through the swirling light. Minutes or perhaps hours passed. Time seemed meaningless in that moment. When the light finally faded, they stood on solid ground once more, and John realized they were no longer on Earth. The sky was a deep shade of violet, dotted with two suns and a scattering of unfamiliar stars. Towering structures of glowing material stretched into the sky, and creatures moved gracefully in the distance, unlike anything John had ever seen. Lyra looked around with a mixture of awe and relief. "We made it," she said softly. John felt a rush of amazement. He had left his ordinary life behind and entered a world that was both beautiful and intimidating. He understood the journey ahead would be even more challenging, but at that moment, the fear he had felt on Earth was replaced by a sense of wonder and determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he could face them, because he and Lyra faced them together. As they walked toward the heart of the city, John felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Protecting Lyra had brought him here, to a world beyond imagination. He knew that more dangers awaited, but he also knew that their bond, their trust, and their courage would guide them through whatever challenges came next. And for the first time in his life, John felt truly alive, ready to embrace the extraordinary journey that had begun the moment he chose to protect a frightened child in the woods. When John and Lyra arrived at the heart of her world, John could hardly believe what he saw. The city stretched far and wide, filled with structures that seemed to shimmer and glow. Walkways hovered above the ground, and beings of all shapes and sizes moved gracefully around them. The air was filled with a hum of energy, soft but powerful, as if the city itself was alive. John could feel a mixture of awe, excitement, and nervousness stirring inside him. He had protected Lyra to bring her here, and now, the moment of truth was at hand. Lyra led him to a grand palace that towered above everything else. Its walls glowed with a soft, golden light, and intricate patterns moved across the surfaces, like flowing water. Guards with elegant armor and glowing staffs stood at attention near the entrance. Lyra approached them confidently, and they bowed slightly in respect. John followed cautiously, aware that this was a world he barely understood, and he had to be careful to show respect. As they entered the palace, John felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. This was the moment when everything would change. The hall was vast, with ceilings so high they seemed to disappear into the light above. At the far end stood the alien queen herself. She was tall, regal, and commanding, with eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Her presence radiated authority, wisdom, and a strange warmth that made John feel simultaneously nervous and welcomed. Lyra stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Mother," she said softly, her voice filled with relief and reverence. The queen's eyes shifted to John, and for a moment he felt exposed under her gaze. He straightened his posture, trying to appear confident despite the racing of his heart. The queen's eyes studied him carefully, taking in every detail, the way he stood, the courage that lingered in his expression, and the small signs of fatigue from the journey. After a moment of silence, she spoke. "You are the one who protected my daughter?" Her voice was calm but carried the weight of immense authority. John nodded, unsure of how to respond. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said respectfully. "I did what I could to keep her safe. That is all." The queen's eyes softened slightly, and she stepped closer, her gaze never leaving his. "It is rare," she said, "for one from another world to act with such courage, with such selflessness, without hesitation or thought of reward. You have proven yourself beyond measure." John felt a mixture of pride and humility. He had only done what he felt was right, never imagining it would be recognized in this extraordinary way. Lyra moved closer to her mother, her small hand brushing against John's as if to guide him. The queen's gaze shifted between them, a subtle smile forming on her lips. "I see now why my daughter speaks of you with such admiration," she said. "You risked yourself for her, even when faced with dangers you could not fully understand. That courage, that loyalty, it is a rare gift. You are not just a protector, you are family. John felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of disbelief, pride, and awe. Family? The word echoed in his mind. He had never imagined that an ordinary man like him could be considered family by someone so powerful and extraordinary. Yet, the sincerity in the Queen's eyes left no doubt. This was real. His actions, his courage, and his willingness to protect Lyra had earned him a place he never could have dreamed of. The Queen extended her hand toward him, a gesture of acceptance and trust. John hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, taking it gently. The moment their hands touched, he felt a warmth and connection that went beyond words. It was as if the Queen was acknowledging not just what he had done, but who he was. A sense of belonging washed over him, something he had never truly felt before. Lyra looked at him, her eyes shining with gratitude and pride. "You see, John," she whispered. "I told you they would understand. I told you it would be okay." John smiled, feeling a deep sense of relief. The journey had been difficult, full of fear and danger, but now, in this moment, he realized it had all been worth it. The Queen led them further into the palace, showing John the halls where important decisions were made and the chambers where the leaders of her world gathered. She introduced him to advisors and trusted friends, all of whom looked at him with curiosity and respect. John could sense that his presence here was unusual, that he did not belong in the traditional sense, but their acceptance was evident. He had earned it through his courage and selflessness. Over the following hours, the Queen spoke with John about the importance of his actions. She explained the dangers her world faced and how critical Lyra's safety had been to the future of her people. John listened carefully, realizing that the stakes were far higher than he had imagined. Protecting Lyra was not just about saving one life. It was about safeguarding hope, stability, and the future of an entire civilization. The responsibility was enormous, but the Queen's faith in him gave him confidence. As the evening light shifted, the Queen invited John and Lyra to dine with her. The meal was unlike anything John had ever experienced. The food glowed softly, filled with flavors that were unfamiliar but delicious. Lyra laughed as John cautiously tasted each dish, marveling at the unique textures and tastes. For a moment, the tension of their journey eased, replaced by a sense of wonder and belonging. During the meal, the Queen spoke to John with a warmth that made him feel truly part of their world. "You have proven yourself," she said, "not only through action but through heart. You are brave, compassionate, and loyal. These qualities are what make a family, not just blood or tradition. You have earned your place among us." John felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He had never thought of himself as extraordinary, but here, in the presence of beings so powerful and wise, he realized that courage and kindness could transcend worlds. As the night grew deeper, John and Lyra prepared to rest. The Queen ensured they had comfortable quarters and that they were safe. John lay awake for a long time, reflecting on everything that had happened. From a quiet morning walk on Earth, to a journey through danger, to standing in the palace of an alien civilization, his life had transformed completely. And yet, the most important transformation was not in the world around him. It was within himself. He had discovered courage, loyalty, and the power of selflessness, and he had found a place where those qualities were valued and recognized. John realized that protecting Lyra had been just the beginning. Their journey had brought him to a new world, a new life, and a new family. He knew that challenges still awaited them, that dangers could still arise, but for the first time, he felt truly ready. With Lyra by his side and the trust of the alien Queen, he knew that together, they could face whatever came next. And so John embraced his new reality. The journey that had begun with a single act of courage had led him to a place of belonging, respect, and love. The alien Queen had not only acknowledged his bravery but had welcomed him into her family. For John, this was more than he could have ever imagined, a reward not for seeking glory but for doing what was right. And as he drifted to sleep that night, he knew that the adventure was far from over, but he would face it with courage, heart, and the knowledge that he had truly found a family among the stars. John's life on Lyra's world was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Every day brought something new sights, new sounds, and new experiences that stretched his understanding of what was possible. He had come to this world as a protector, an ordinary man who had acted out of instinct and courage. Now he was a member of a family that spanned worlds, a trusted friend of the alien queen, and a guardian of hope for her civilization. The first days were filled with learning. John had to adjust to the customs, the technology, and even the way people moved and communicated in this strange, beautiful world. At first, it was overwhelming. The streets glowed softly under the light of twin suns, and creatures of all shapes and sizes passed by, some with wings, others with multiple limbs, all moving with grace and purpose. John often found himself staring in awe, forgetting the lessons of the moment because everything around him was so extraordinary. Lyra stayed close, guiding him patiently. "It will take time," she told him. "This world is very different, but you will learn. You are part of it now, John." Her words gave him comfort. Knowing he was not alone, that she trusted him completely, gave him the confidence to embrace his new life. John quickly discovered that his role went beyond merely being a protector. The alien queen often sought his opinion on matters of safety, strategy, and diplomacy. His perspective, grounded in his life on Earth, was unusual and valuable. He had no formal training in alien politics or technology, but he had instincts that proved surprisingly helpful. His common-sense approach and moral clarity impressed many of the Queen's advisors, earning him respect and trust. As the days passed, John also developed a deeper bond with Lyra. Their relationship had started as one of protector and protected, but it had grown into something more profound. He admired her bravery, her intelligence, and her resilience. She, in turn, admired his courage, his patience, and his willingness to act when others hesitated. Together, they faced challenges, explored the wonders of the alien world, and learned to rely on each other completely. One morning, the Queen called John to her private chamber. She spoke with her usual calm authority, but there was warmth in her eyes. "John," she said, "your actions have not only saved my daughter, but they have also saved hope for our people. Courage and kindness are rare, even in my world, and you have shown both in abundance. That is why I call you family, and that is why you have a place here with us." John felt a surge of emotion. He had never imagined that a simple act of bravery on Earth would lead to such recognition and trust. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said humbly. "I only did what I felt was right." The Queen smiled. "And that is why it matters so much. Heroism is not always about strength or power. It is about the choices we make. You chose to protect when others would have walked away. That choice has changed many lives, including your own." As John continued to adapt to his new life, he also began to explore the world beyond the palace. Lyra introduced him to her friends, teachers and mentors who were eager to share their knowledge and experiences. John was fascinated by the technology, the arts, and the culture of this world. Every day he learned something new. A new method of communication, a new way to travel, or a new perspective on leadership and courage. Despite the wonder and excitement, John never forgot his origins. He often thought of Earth, of the quiet mornings and simple routines he had once known. But he also realized that his life had been transformed in ways that were unimaginable. He was no longer just an ordinary man. He was part of something extraordinary. His courage had led him to this world, and his choices continued to shape his path. John also found joy in small everyday moments. He and Lyra would explore gardens filled with glowing flowers, walk along rivers that sparkled under twin suns, and watch alien creatures play in ways that reminded him of childhood games on Earth. These moments of peace and wonder balanced the weight of responsibility he carried. He realized that life was not just about duty or adventure. It was also about connection, friendship, and love. Over time, John became an integral part of the community. People sought his counsel, and his opinions were valued. He helped train younger members in strategies of protection and courage, sharing the lessons he had learned through experience rather than formal study. He became a symbol of trust and bravery, an example of how one person's choices could have far-reaching effects. One evening, as he stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing city, Lyra joined him. "Do you ever miss Earth?" she asked softly. John thought for a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted. "I miss the quiet mornings, the familiar streets, the simple routines. But I don't miss the fear, the danger. Here, I feel like I belong, like I can make a difference." Lyra smiled. "You do belong, and you have made a difference, not just for me, but for all of us. You taught me that courage and kindness are worth everything." John reached out and took her hand. "And you taught me that even in the most extraordinary circumstances, there is always room for hope." As time went on, John found a rhythm in his new life. He balanced responsibility with exploration, duty with joy, and courage with compassion. He discovered that bravery was not about being fearless. It was about facing fear, making choices, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. His journey had taken him from a simple walk in the woods to a world beyond imagination. And he had grown in ways he never expected. The alien queen continued to guide and mentor him, treating him not just as a protector, but as a trusted member of her family. Her acceptance gave John confidence and purpose. He knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with courage, loyalty, and a clear heart. The bond he had formed with Lyra and the Queen was unbreakable, built on trust, shared experience, and the knowledge that they had faced danger together and emerged stronger. And so, John's life became a tapestry of adventure, learning, and connection. From the moment he chose to protect Lyra in the woods, his path had been extraordinary. He had faced fear, navigated unknown worlds, and discovered courage he never knew he possessed. In the end, he found not just safety or recognition, but something far more valuable: belonging, purpose, and family. He had become more than he had ever imagined. Through one act of courage, he had changed the lives of many and had found a home among the stars. His story was a reminder that bravery, selflessness, and the choice to do what is right can ripple across worlds, creating bonds and opportunities that even the most ordinary person might never expect. John looked at Lyra and the Queen, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and peace. He had found a place where he mattered, where his actions had significance, and where love and trust transcended the boundaries of worlds. His journey had begun with a single decision: to protect a frightened child, and it had led him to a life richer and more extraordinary than he could have ever dreamed.